Hello, you're listening to VHC, Vibes, History, and Culture, a show where we explore the unknown and little known facts and gems about music and popular culture from a millennial lens. This is your host, Kevin Washington. And in this episode, we are taking a journey into the FabFest in Charlotte that is taking place next weekend, starting next Friday on July the 21st through Saturday, July the 22nd. The celebration is being put on by Tosco Music in Charlotte, a non-profit organization that presents a wide variety of music through performances and outreach programs, all while creating community amongst music lovers, audiences, and performers alike. Also, they help connect professional and amateur musicians. Such an amazing organization in the Queen City that puts together such amazing events, all the while fostering incredible musical talent of Charlotte. And in this episode, we'll be chatting with founder of Tosco Music himself, John Tosco, on everything Tosco Music, the musical history behind it, as well as the history behind the FabFest. So many great gems to discuss, so let's get into it. First, we talked about the organization Tosco Music and how it all got started.
Well, we started in the 80s, the mid 80s, well over 30 years ago, with gathering musicians of all genres into my living room. I had been playing professionally, and I would have friends over, and we would have jam sessions and song circles. And I like to play all kinds of music. I love all styles, and I would invite musicians, whether they were playing jazz or country, bluegrass, or rock, or pop, whatever, folk music. And we did sing-alongs together as well. And over the years, this grew where more and more people were coming. We couldn't fit in my living room anymore, but it got to be known as the Tosco Music Party, which we still keep that name today, the Tosco Music Party, or we call it a TMP for short. In 1999, we became a 501c3. We had already started doing music over at different nursing homes and senior centers, and we were looking for ways to support young kids with music lessons. We would just kind of passing the hat kind of thing. But these events grew, and now we are a thriving nonprofit organization with 4 major events, or Tosco Music Parties, every year at Night Theater, the 1,200-seat theater that's part of Blumenthal Performing Arts. And we also have quite a bit of programming we do in the community. We provide paid opportunities for musicians to work at, whether it's festivals or weddings or private events or at senior center. And so we're facilitating that, and we gave away, last year we did over 100 events at over 30 locations, and we gave out $12,000 in music scholarships. Now this is for and this is for all of the music community, so it's a very diverse and wide-ranging group. And our shows, the Tosco Music Parties, we have about 15 acts on each show, and again, it's all different genres. So it's really, our stage is probably the most diverse stage in Charlotte, with the most variety and diversity. And so it's been something that the community has gravitated toward and is supporting.
Ooh.
influence in my life was the Beatles music when I was a kid and started learning to play the guitar myself. And so when we did these music parties, we always had some Beatles music part of it. They were always part of the show. And about 18 years ago, we decided to do one show that was nothing but Beatles music, still keeping all the different genres. So we might have a jazz trio do their version of a Beatles song, or an a cappella group, or a country group, whatever, and do their own versions, as well as bands doing the pop or rock versions that we all know. So it became our biggest show of the year. I mean, our most popular show. And so in 2019, we expanded it into a full weekend of the celebration of the music of the Beatles, and we call it FabFest, Charlotte's Beatles Festival. And it's really becoming a destination in the Southeast. It's the only festival of its kind in the Southeast. There's a big festival for the Beatles in New York, one in Chicago, Indiana. But this is where with this event, we have people coming in from out of town who are Beatle fans. And we have 2 evening concerts at Night Theater. The Friday evening is a Beatles tribute band called Britbeat. And they do the different eras of the Beatles all in one show. So they'll come out and start off with the Suits, the early period. Then the next set, they'll come back and they wear the Sgt. Pepper's uniforms and do that middle psychedelic period that they went through. And then the closing set is the Abbey Road period, the Beatles' final stages as a band. And it's a huge multimedia presentation they do as part of the concert. So that's on Friday night. And then on Saturday night, also at the Night Theater, is the Tosco Music Beatles tribute. Basically like a Tosco music party, but all Beatles songs. So we do sing-alongs throughout the night with the audience, and we have 15 different acts, each doing their version of a Beatles song. And we've got mostly local and regional acts, and we've got some acts that are coming in from New York and Nashville as well. Then during the day, from 10 to 5, we are at the Parr Center at Central Piedmont Community College. That is the brand new building that they just opened last year. We were actually the first event they hosted there last summer. And we basically take over the whole building. We'll have 3 stages there. There's the main stage with a different band playing every hour. And then we'll have our cover song contest stage, where not just bands, but any musicians can sign up to be in the contest and to do their version of the Beatles song that will be judged. And then there will be a second round of finalists performing later in the afternoon on that stage. And there will be cash prizes for that. And that could be a solo artist or a duo, trio, or a full band.
We continue to dive in a little further about the great activities in store for this year's FabFest.
But we also have a huge art contest. Last year we had 60 pieces of art by 50 different artists, and not just painting. We had ceramics and sculptures. And this is a juried competition, over $3,000 in cash prizes. So we are supporting visual artists as well. We are going to have their art not only on display at the festival, but we are going to have it for sale online, where the artists themselves are selling it. But we will put it all in one place online so that they can hopefully make some sales. And we'll have it online before the festival, and then also for a week after the festival, so people can purchase the art as well. But the level of art is amazing. But there are so many other things going on during the daytime as well, like we'll have food trucks, of course, and we'll have all kinds of vendors. We'll have a whole marketplace of Beatles memorabilia and vinyl records and such. There'll be a family fun room for the kids, games and crafts and songs for kids. very interactive around the music of the Beatles. We have authors who are coming in doing presentations, including John Lennon's lawyer wrote a book. His name is Jay Bergen. He's one of the authors, one of the 4 authors that we will have doing presentations. And then we will have Beatles bingo and trivia games with contests, prizes. We're also going to have a drum clinic by Greg Bissonette. Greg is Ringo Starr's drummer. He tours with Ringo because Ringo's not always on the drums when he's touring. He's often out front. And even when he is playing the drums, often he has Greg on drums as well. So that's kind of cool, a close connection to the Beatles there. So it's a huge day, a huge weekend of everything Beatles, and that is our biggest event of the year. The other shows that we do at Night Theater, performers do their own music in the fall show and the spring show. And then in December, we do one that's all holiday music.
This part of the conversation, we get to talk a little Beatles history that not many know about, but nonetheless worthy to explore and share.
I'm just thinking about the festivals and especially about the Beatles. It's sort of like keeping their legacy alive while at the same time bridging the gap between the different generations. Either they're people who are in attendance or people who are performing. So it's sounded cool what you're doing.
Yeah, it's very cool. It is multi-generational. You'll see boomers coming, who grew up with the Beatles, and you'll see, their grandkids coming, young kids that are discovering them and love that music. Their music is also so adaptive to different genres. So professional musicians will often cover their, and so it's not difficult or challenging to find musicians other than rock bands to come in and play that music. There are multiple famous jazz artists, for example, who have done Beatles material, have their take on it. And something else that I know your listeners will appreciate is the Beatles. They refused to play to segregated audiences when they were touring. And we're talking in the mid 60s.
Right.
1965, the segregation was still happening in public concerts, for example. And they were just refused to play any concerts that were segregated. That just didn't make sense to them. And I think it speaks highly of them, of them as individuals, but also, what they did for our culture, in addition to the amazing music they left us. Some of the authors who are speaking are just huge experts on all those little things that I may not know. I do know, not too long ago I learned that Paul McCartney's, one of his biggest influences was Little Richard. And that was, he is one of the architects of rock and roll. And often, Elvis gets that title, King of Rock and Roll. And Paul McCartney of the Beatles and Little Richard himself would say Little Richard was really the king of rock and roll. It's really interesting when you go back and look at their influences. As you pointed out, there's it was the Black American music that was getting over to England that they were hearing, and that's what they fell in love with, and so it really influenced their music as well.
here to wrap up a little bit and Gary to ask you about that, or is there anything else you want listeners to know about Tosco or FabFest?
Well, just the FabFest is 3 separate events, but you can bundle tickets together. You can buy any 2 or all 3, and if in the more events you go to, the bigger the discount you get. The daytime tickets are $35 for the full day. We're at the Par Center at CPC, but if you're under 18, it's half price, and if you're under 5, it's free for kids. And we want people to be aware that they might see 3 different events as part of FabFest, the 2 evening concerts and the daytime, but it can be bundled together, and it's really the fully immersive experience, if your schedule allows it.
As we wrap things up for this episode, just wanted to thank all of you for taking the time out to listen to the podcast. Whenever you're listening to the podcast, thank you so much for continuing to listen and support VHC. And a huge thank you to John Tosco of Tosco Music and everyone part of this great organization for participating and getting the interview. And we also want to encourage all of you to take part of FabFest, which will be happening next weekend. So you want to go ahead and plan a trip to the Queen City for this incredible festival that's about to take place in celebration of all things Beatles. And you can hear this podcast on Buzzsprout and of course Spotify. And we're also on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And you can also catch video form of updated episodes on our YouTube page as well. You can reach out to me via email, kevwash46@yahoo.com, or social media, Twitter at kevinwash08, and Instagram, Kevin_Washington_887. And that is also the name under the new social media app, Threads. You can catch me on there as well. Thanks for listening to VHC, and we'll see you again next time.